You're about to hear. Something is wrong with your reality. Big government, big business, the mainstream media, and orthodox science all tell you what to believe. Yet the holes in their stories only get bigger every day. Welcome to your wake-up call. Welcome to your red pill. Welcome to Mental Self-Defense Radio and the Jake Shannon radio program. Now, here's your host, Jake Shannon.
Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to Mental Self-Defense Radio. I'm your host, Jake Shannon. This is where Utah gets its daily dose of liberty and logic. Think of us as the Second Amendment for your mind. This is the show that fights to close that gap between rhetoric and reality. Now follow my instructions closely. Write down our call-in numbers. You're going to need them. 801-254-5855 in Salt Lake County, 801-470-5855 in Utah County, and 801-670-5855 in Weber and North Davis County. And just as Thomas Jefferson before me, I have sworn an eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the minds of men. And while I may not agree with what you say when you call in, I will always fight for your right to say it. Now today, Tuesday, May 24th, interesting day. Lots of interesting stuff happening in the news. We on this show, at least yesterday, we tried to make it. We tried to make a difference with regards to the vote on the Patriot Act, and unfortunately, that did not happen. Unfortunately, it seems that the Patriot Act, I think it was 74-8, the Senate voted to proceed on the ill-named Patriot Act extensions. And I was looking about, and everybody was calling Lee's office, and supposedly the feedback I got from the people who called his office said that Mike Lee was going to vote no, and instead he didn't vote at all. Of course, Orrin Hatch voted yay, unfortunately. So, for me, with regards to liberty, the Patriot Act is just a no-brainer. This is the litmus test. Does the candidate care about liberty? Yes or no? Well, yesterday, I'm here on mainjustice.com. They did a write-up on it. The Senate voted 74-8 to invoke cloture on the motion to proceed to the bill introduced by Harry Reid, bringing an up or down vote on the legislation closer to fruition, yada, yada, yada. Here are the people that voted. Max Baucus, Democrat out of Montana, voted to end the Patriot Act. Mark Begich, Democrat out of Alaska, voted to end the extensions of the Patriot Act. Dean Heller, Republican out of Nevada, voted to end the Patriot Act. Jeff Merkley, Democrat out of Oregon, voted to end the Patriot Act. Lisa Murkowski, Republican out of Alaska, voted to end the Patriot Act. Rand Paul, Republican out of Kentucky, voted to end the Patriot Act. Bernie Sanders, Independent out of Vermont, voted to end the Patriot Act. And last but not least, John Tester, Democratic Senator out of Montana, voted against the extension. So from what I understand, this means that it will be moving back to the House. Now, more hoops to jump through. So that means we need to call our representatives, our U.S. House of Representatives, call them and let them know you mean business on the Patriot Act. We know to vote out Hatch for sure now. And let's pay very close attention to how everybody else votes with regards to the Patriot Act. Interesting, too, The U.S. Supreme Court ruled yesterday that California has to release 40,000 inmates because of rights violations, basically. The Supreme Court of the United States ruling affirmed a lower court that required California to reduce its inmate population to 137% capacity. So that means they're over capacity by to reduce it to being over capacity by 37%, which they are now at 180% capacity. That is absolutely nuts. And of course, you know, the only commonsensical thing, the thing that Ron Paul has been saying that he would do when he's elected president of the United States, is he would pardon those who are in prison for victimless crimes. Well, problem solved. Unfortunately, I have a feeling the people who are going to be released here from California, these 40,000 inmates, I'm sure a lot of them are going to be violent offenders. And if they would just take Ron Paul's advice and release the ones that are nonviolent, maybe got busted for smoking pot or something stupid. I'm not saying it was smart. Just saying they're nonviolent. Release them. Stop ruining people's lives. Leave the violent ones, the ones that are perpetrating fraud. Anybody who's guilty of fraud or coercion, keep them locked away, please. But the ones that are just dumb, or, you know, maybe you don't think it's dumb, maybe whatever, they're just victimless crimes, no victim, no crime. Let them out. Now, what's interesting in connection with that, excuse me, are these two judges that were recently, they've recently pled guilty to selling children to for-profit prisons. Here, give a listen.
Unprecedented case of judicial corruption is unfolding in Pennsylvania. Several hundred families have filed a class action lawsuit against two former judges who've pleaded guilty to taking bribes in return for placing youths in privately owned jails. Judges Mark Ciavarella and Michael Conahan are said to have received $2.6 million for ensuring that juvenile suspects were jailed in prisons operated by the companies Pennsylvania Child Care and a sister company, Western Pennsylvania Child Care.
So basically, these judges were taking money to throw kids into a for-profit prison.
Some of the young people were jailed over the objections of their probation officers. An estimated 5,000 juveniles have been sentenced by Ciavarella since the scheme started in 2002. In addition to the jailing of the youths, the judges also admitted to helping, quote, facilitate the construction of private jails. The U.S. Attorney for the Middle District of Pennsylvania, Martin Carlson, unveiled the charges last month.
These payments were made to the judges, it is alleged, in return for discretionary acts by the judges favoring these businesses, acts relating to the construction, expansion, operation of these juvenile facilities, and acts relating to the placement of juveniles in these facilities.
Now, these are just two judges that got caught. How much of this is going on where innocent people's lives are being ruined because of these awful incentives and these ridiculous laws? If somebody's violent or fraudulent, lock them up. But if these kids are just making a mistake, I mean, how many of these judges are getting away with this? This is pure evil.
Thursday, judges Ciavarella and Conahan entered guilty pleas on charges of wire fraud and income tax fraud. They're currently free on a $1 million bail bond pending sentencing. Their plea agreements call for jail sentences of more than 7 years. No charges have been filed against the private prisons that paid the bribes. Pennsylvania's Supreme Court has appointed an outside judge to review all the cases tried by Ciavarella and Conahan. But the case has prompted calls for broader reforms of the juvenile justice system in Pennsylvania nationwide. We're joined now by two of the thousands of of youths jailed by the corrupt judges. On the line with us from Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18-year-old Jamie Quinn is with us. She spent more than 11 months in a privately run juvenile prison camp after being sentenced by Judge Mark Chiavarella as a first-time offender. Also on the line, the nearby town of Wilkes-Barre, is 22-year-old.
Well, anyway, you can get the rest of that clip if you go to our website, mentalselfdefense.com. Just go there and then scroll down. Look on the there's 2 Facebook feeds there on that front page. Go all the way to the bottom. You'll see it. It says right there, 2 U.S. judges plead guilty to selling children to private prisons. You can listen to the whole clip. I mean, it is just god-awful. And we've got California. We've got bad judges like that filling these prisons for... I mean, this is just a total conflict of interest. Absolutely ridiculous. Well, we've got to keep up the fight. And some of the best ammunition that we have comes from these guys that are really thinking hard about these issues. I try to think hard, but today's guest, I love talking to him because every time I'm done having a conversation with him, I feel like my intelligence quotient just went up a few points. He is a very smart guy, and he's very self-effacing, so people like me have to say it so people know how smart he is, because I'm pretty sure he won't tell you that. A very, very, very great guy. David Gordon, PhD, got his PhD at UCLA in intellectual history. He's a senior fellow over at the Ludwig von Mises Institute. Writes the Mises Review, which is a book review, so he's super well read. For those of you who know some of the players in Liberty, Murray Rothbard has called him a universal genius. Tom Woods, author of Nullification and Rollback and other books, has said that David Gordon is the smartest man I know. That's quoting Thomas Woods, and I'd have to agree. The guy really knows a lot. So today we're thrilled to bring David back. I guess he's becoming a regular on the show, and I feel absolutely thrilled and lucky. He's going to be offering a course that I thought was relevant, but I want to talk to him about a bunch of different things. But he's going to be offering a course that is on Ayn Rand. So it'll be nice to actually get somebody to teach about Ayn Rand who is not a member of their cult. So you get a little bit of a deeper understanding, a guy, again, who has a PhD in intellectual history and has just acclaim from a lot of guys that are equally smart. So without further ado, let me bring on Dr. Gordon. Are you there, sir?
Oh, hi, Jay.
How are you?
Oh, pretty good. Thanks for all the very nice things you said about me. After what you said, I can hardly wait to hear what I have to say.
Yeah, yeah, well, I don't think I'm overselling you is the thing, though. You're a very humble guy, and you are offering this new, it's a 6-week online course, which is great. So people here in Utah, people in Alaska, people in China, well, if it gets past the censors in China, I guess, but they can just log on to the internet and take this class that you're offering, 6 weeks about Ayn Rand and her philosophy.
Yes, that's right. That's going to be starting June 16th.
So in about 3 weeks or so?
Yes, that's right.
And what if people want to go and sign up? What is the best website that
Well, they should go to Mises.org, www.mises.org, and then just go to, you'll see it says Mises Academy, and then they can enroll in the course.
I would highly recommend anybody do so. It's really great that you make yourself available to people no matter where they are, because sometimes that's the challenge of learning, is that people can't go to university or get, high caliber academic practice, as it may be, and teaching. So I highly recommend anybody go to Mises.org and sign up for Dr. Gordon's class. Now, what are you going to be covering? Ayn Rand right now is hot because this movie came out, and everybody's talking about her. Are you basically just going to be, I'm always skeptical of these classes because typically they're run by her acolytes, and they kind of kiss her rear end for making a bad metaphor there, but they really kind of suck up to her. So I'd like to, after the break, maybe you can explain to us the scope of the class.
All right, thank you.
Okay, great. We'll come back after the break. We've got David Gordon from the Mises Institute talking about Ayn Rand. Come on back.
AM 630, K-Talk, Utah's independent radio voice for 45 years.
Is it about time to put in a new floor? Nothing compares to the quality, look, and feel of a genuine wood floor. And when it comes to quality, selection, and service, there's nobody that compares to the Wood Floor Warehouse, Utah's #1 locally owned wood floor superstore. Save up to 70% on factory direct wood flooring. Whether you're looking for professional installation or you're a do-it-yourselfer, the Wood Floor Warehouse is your answer. With any order, attend a free installation class, and your tool rental is also free. Or just leave your installation to the fine craftsmen of the Wood Floor Warehouse. The choice is yours. For the largest selection, best price, and friendly people who really value your business, drop on by to one of the Wood Floor Warehouse's 2 locations. In Salt Lake City between 4500 South and 3900 South, just west of I-15, and in Ogden at 5280 Freeway Park Drive. Check them out online, woodfloorwarehouse.com, or call toll-free 1-877-778-WOOD. That's 1-877-778-WOOD. 1-877-778-WOOD.
Hey, this is Nathan Computer Girl from PC Laptops. Naya's new word of the month is internest. The internest is the cocoon of blankets, pillows, and comfy things you gather around yourself to keep warm while spending lots of time on your PC Laptops computer. What makes PC Laptops the best place to get a computer is our personal relationship with you. There's so many new technologies coming out that people find themselves frazzled. Your computer is your social networking tool, your music player, movie theater, and creation station. That's where PC Laptops makes it super easy by making it all work together for you for a lifetime. No appointment necessary. Every new PC Laptops desktop computer comes with lifetime parts and labor warranty. Nobody else does that. And to make it extra sweet, we're doing 0 down, 0 interest financing for a whole year. OAC. So get into any of our 9 locations right now, or call us at 1-877-596-SAVE, or check us out at PCLaptops.com. Because at PC Laptops, we really love you.
At Acme Heating and Air, we save you time and money. The state of Utah has an energy audit program that will pay you hundreds or thousands to have new energy efficient equipment, windows, insulation, and more installed in your home. But funds are limited. So act now by calling Acme Heating and Air at 801-467-1050. With over 25 years of heating and air experience at Acme, we work extra hard to earn your trust and confidence. Plus, we pledge only drug-free employees with complete and comprehensive background checks. Right now, Acme has up to $2,000 in rebates for new furnaces and a brand new springtime AC special. Acme will chemically clean your outside AC unit and pressure check all lines and system components for just $78. Imagine that, just $78 to make sure your home and family are cool and comfy this summer. Call Acme Heating and Air today at 801-467-1050 for upfront pricing with no surprises. At Acme, if you're uncomfortable, so are we. Call today, 801-467-1050. That's 801-467-1050.
Let's be real. Smoking sucks. It's a nasty, expensive, unattractive, and thoroughly unhealthy habit. There's the acrid smell in your clothes and on your breath. Yuck. Not to mention the increased health risk that cigarette smoke presents to those nearest and dearest to you. Call Salt Lake City Family Hypnosis now for your free consultation to learn how you can quit today. 801-738-5390. That's Salt Lake City Family Hypnosis, 801-738-5390.
The voice of Utah. AM 630 K-Talk.
K-Talk.com.
#1 for the most live, local, two-way talk.
Everybody's on the phone, so connected and all alone.
Welcome back, Mental Self-Defense Radio. I'm your host, Jake Shannon. Today we are joined on the line by a very, very profound thinker with regards to liberty. So certainly you're going to want to call in and talk to this guy. He is so smart. Dr. David Gordon is with us from the Mises Institute. How are you today, sir?
Oh, I'm doing pretty well. How about you?
Oh, doing super. Always trying not to let the daily news get me down, because it's always it seems like it's never-ending fight for liberty. You recently had some surgery. You're doing better, I assume?
Oh, yeah, yes, I'm feeling much better now. Thank you.
Very
I had
good.
hernia surgery, but that was a couple months ago.
Okay, so you're up and about, moving around, and continuing your fight here in Liberty. So why is it important? Why did you think it was important? I mean, obviously Ayn Rand's popular, but why look at Ayn Rand as a thinker in this online class?
Well, as you mentioned, a great many people are attracted to her ideas, and she was a very strong champion of liberty and the free market. But she went further than just writing about the free market and why it's a good idea and what's wrong with socialism or government intervention. She developed a whole system of ethics and also a metaphysics, that's say a view about the fundamental nature, reality, and also epistemology, how we know things. She had a whole philosophical system. So a lot of people are interested in that system. They want to ask, well, if we support liberty in the free market, does her system give us the ultimate basis for doing so? Does this give us a way of understanding reality that's better than competing philosophical systems? So what I want to do in the course is examine what she has to say about metaphysics, epistemology, ethics, and politics, and see whether her ideas hold up. In the course, what I'll be doing is trying to give an idea of what it is she's saying, and then go through some of the arguments she gives and try to see whether they're good ones or not.
Well, and I think this is a very valuable exercise for those who are liberty activists or libertarian or take these ideas seriously, because and Ayn Rand herself said that ideas matter, that philosophy is important, and we should turn that. We spend so much time turning our intellectual focus and criticism against the state, rightfully so. But, sometimes it's a good idea to turn that lens upon ourselves and to see where our own errors might lie, or at least on those who are also inside the movement as well. I know that, and maybe you can elaborate on this because you've written the book on Rothbard, literally. Murray Rothbard, who, for those who may not know, is really, I'd venture to say, maybe the most important libertarian of the 20th century with regards to strategy, also really developing the ideas of libertarianism in the modern age. He had a run-in with Ayn Rand. He was actually a member of her inner circle or somehow affiliated with her cult in New York. Is that right?
Yes, well, what happened, you see, he first knew her in the either early 1950s or late 1940s, and his initial reaction was rather negative. But then when Atlas Shrugged came out in 1957, he was very impressed with the novel, as many people are, and he wrote her a fan letter, which she liked. And for a while, he was meeting with her group. Rothbard has his own group, and they met with Ayn Rand. But then problems developed. There were mainly three problems that developed. First, Rothbard had a terrific sense of humor, and he and his group put on a little play for themselves where they were making fun of some of the mannerisms of the Rand group, which was called the Collective. They had a rather self-important view of themselves, and they were easy to parody. And then word of that got out to Nathaniel Brandon, who was Rand's main assistant. They didn't like that. And the second point was that the objectivists are very strongly atheistic. They believe not only that God doesn't exist, but that it's the concept of God is logically contradictory. And Rothbard's wife was a Christian. She was a quite devout Protestant, and they didn't like that. They wanted the wife, was named Joey, to listen to the Nathaniel Brandon lectures on atheism, and if this was supposed to convert her to atheism, and if she refused to listen to reason, or reason as they took it to be, then Rothbard was supposed to divorce her, and of course he wasn't willing to do that. The third point difference was Rothbard wrote an essay for a conference where he mentioned an argument that some people raise against determinism. It's a rather controversial argument. The determinism is the view that we don't have free will, that our choices are determined. And the argument that was he raised was, he said, well, supposing determinism is true, then our believing determinism is itself determined, and so we wouldn't be believing it for good reason. We would just be believing it because we've been determined to do so. Now, whether this is a good argument is a very controversial matter, but the Randian said Rothbard took this argument from the master's thesis by Barbara Brandon, who was Nathaniel Brandon's wife at that time, and that he didn't acknowledge her in his essay. And the odd part about this is this particular argument isn't one that Barbara Brandon originated. It's a very well-known argument in philosophy. One of the people who favored it was Immanuel Kant, who's one of those the Randians most hate, but they accused Rothbard of plagiarism because he gave this argument without citing her, and they threatened legal action, and then Rothbard had to show a lot of other people had come up with this argument before her, but they really didn't get along at all after that.
So, I mean, the claims that Ayn Rand's group was a cult is not that far off the mark because, like you said, one, you couldn't poke fun at him like he did. What was it? Mozart was a red, or that was the play that he...
Yes, that was a bit later, but this was just they were among themselves. They made a tape where they were rather mocking the way some of the people in the Rand circle
and instead
behaved.
of having a sense of humor and maybe being self-deprecating and laughing at it, they got offended, and then they actually asked him to divorce his wife to remain in the group.
Well, if she wouldn't listen to reason and retained her atheist views after listening to the arguments they had, retained her Christian views after listening to their arguments in favor of atheism. She wasn't interested in she didn't think they knew much about the sub-religion, so she didn't really care to hear what they had to say.
Well, I think this is a very good topic because she was powerful, and she did excite a lot of people with her novel, Atlas Shrugged, and you can never take that from her, just like happened with Rothbard, that he was impressed by that. But then there are these problems like that. I mean, it's so strange that somebody is libertarian or a fan of liberty, let's say, because I guess she was very anti-libertarian or something, but that she could maintain that view or say that she's pro-liberty while not allowing any kind of free thought or dissent or disagreement within her own camp. I mean, how does she maintain that unusual perspective?
Well, I think what she would say is she doesn't favor coercing people who don't agree with her. It isn't that people who had views that she considered wrong should be forcibly suppressed, but that she believed her views were capable of being demonstrated by reason, and if someone after a while wasn't willing to accept reason, then she wouldn't want to associate with them. It would be, from her point of view, suppose you were talking to someone who kept insisting that 2 + 2 = 5, and you couldn't get him to see what was wrong with saying that. So after a while, you would probably just give up and say, well, I can't talk to this person anymore. So I think that's the way she viewed people who didn't accept what she said. Now, one thing I'm going to stress in my course is that she seemed to take certain metaphysical views, certain views about the way the world is, that are just theories or hypotheses that one might have, as if they were self-evidently true. So suppose you say, as she did, everything in the world except for human choices just had to be the way it is. Suppose we find light travels at about 186,000 miles per second. So this isn't just something that happens to be the case. It couldn't possibly have been anything other than that. So that's a view that most philosophers would find very implausible, that we couldn't even conceive that light had some different speed. But she would say, no, except for human choices, every property of anything is logically necessary. So if you talk to objectivists or have exchanges with them, they'll just give this view, and you say, well, I don't see why you have to hold that. They'll just keep saying this as if it's obvious that it's true. So then so you can see how discussion can be difficult. So what they would find is, if you're in a group with them, and then if people don't accept what they consider obviously true, they'll find it hard to continue talking to them. And one thing that's happened also, it's interesting, among the objectivists, there are sometimes disputes on exactly how they're supposed to interpret various parts of the objectivist philosophy, or how it should be developed further. And some people, not all objectivists, but some of them, such as the group headed by Leonard Peikoff, who was the one who was the heir to her estate, that they tend to expel people who don't go along with them. Peikoff has a new book that he sponsored by David Harriman called On Induction, that came out recently. I think it's called something like The Inductive Leap. And another leading objectivist who was a member of the Peikoff group said, well, he didn't agree with this theory, some of the way this book was presented. So Peikoff said, well, you can't be on the board I won't serve on the same board of this other group with you because you said that. So even within their own group, they tend to, at least he doesn't tend to be very tolerant of dissenters. Something like, here's the way things are.
And there's two camps, big camps, it seems. There's that group, which is what, ARI, the Ayn Rand Institute. Yeah. And then there's the other group that's led by David Kelly, and I can't remember. What is their name again? The Atlas Society or something?
Yes, Atlas Society. Yes, I think at least. Now, David Kelly wrote a very interesting book called Evidence of the Senses, which was a defense of what's called direct realism in perception. It's something like, the issue is, suppose you say you're looking at a telephone right now, or at least I'm looking at a telephone. What am I seeing? Is it that I'm seeing a mental image of the telephone, or am I actually seeing the telephone? A direct realist position would be, I'm really seeing the telephone. So he wrote a book called Evidence of the Senses. I thought it was a very good book. I reviewed it in International Philosophical Quarterly, September 1988. That was quite a while ago. But he split with Peikoff because he said Peikoff was too intolerant. In particular, I think Kelly had spoken to a libertarian group. The Peikoff said, well, libertarians don't have the proper philosophical foundation for their views. So if you talk to them, or you're in effect giving them your sanction, you're saying, if you think they're wrong about certain things, this is worth talking to. It's legitimate to talk to them. So,
which would be somewhat supportive of the way Ayn Rand looked at Ludwig von Mises's work.
Yes, that's a very good point. I mean, she thought that Mises was wrong about the philosophical foundations of things, but he had very good economics. But that's an excellent point, yes, that you raised.
Well, we're here talking with David Gordon, PhD, about Ayn Rand in this upcoming course. He's going to be trying to help people get their mind around her philosophy from a libertarian perspective. Come on back after the break.
AM 630, K-Talk. When you're talking ethics, integrity, and honesty, you're talking K-Talk.
What you doing here?
I'm redistributing the wealth. I learned in school spreading the wealth is good for everyone.
Well, I learned from real life that it's not. In fact, there's a word for it. It's called theft.
Hi, this is Representative Carl Wimmer. I believe in America and fighting for the principles we need to return her to glory. I am partnering with Buy Back America to bring you a special screening of I Want Your Money, one of the most politically charged films of this era. This is a must-see film for every American who loves this country. This film was so powerful that many in Washington don't want you to see it, but you will see it in the original director's cut. Join us Thursday, May 26th at 6:30 p.m. for the screening and reception. A minimum donation of $15 will benefit the Buy Back America bus tour. Call today, 801-253-4883. That number again is 801-253-4883, or email tim@buybackamerica.com.
I Want Your Money, a controversial look at government spending, coming this fall.
63% of Americans are overweight. If you've decided it's time to leave your flat behind, HipFit Weight Loss is for you. HipFit changes habits. Lose the bad habits, lose the weight. HipFit is guaranteed to make your weight loss successful and has absolutely no health risks. HipFit students are not required to count calories, weigh portions, or buy specialty food. Start losing weight immediately. Call 801-635-4488. HipFit is conveniently located at Salt Lake City Family Hypnosis. Ask about our Guaranteed to Stop Smoking program. 801-635-4488.
Tune in on Sundays at 4 p.m. to learn the latest cutting-edge science of health with your hosts Hugo Rodier, MD, and Gary Olson, DC, on the Integrative Health Show sponsored by Pioneer Comprehensive Medical Clinic in Draper. Our country is suffering from poor health due to nutritional, environmental, and stress problems. Learn how to address these problems and not rely on symptomatic treatments that often have too many side effects. The Integrative Health Show, Sundays at 4 p.m. on K-Talk AM 630.
Tune in each weekday afternoon at 4 for Drive Time Live, the Mills Crenshaw Show, brought to you by efoodsdirect.com/Mills. Gourmet meals at your demand, just add water. efoodsdirect.com/Mills.
The voice of Utah. AM 630 K-Talk.
K-Talk.com.
Number one for the most live, local, two-way talk.
Operator, well, could you help me place this call?
Welcome back, Mental Self-Defense Radio. I'm your host, Jake Shannon. We are joined on the line today with David Gordon is with us. He is from the Mises Institute. He's a senior fellow. He has a PhD in intellectual history. And he is going to be teaching a course here starting in the middle of June on Ayn Rand and objectivism as a non-objectivist, as an intellectual independent and a libertarian. And the reason why I find this fascinating, I wrote a book called Teocond. And again, it's a play on the words Tea Party. It's kind of conflating Tea Party with neoconservatives. Neoconservatives being the Leninist Republicans, the big government Republicans that have kind of messed us up, the George Bush era type guys. Now, the thing that in that book I'm concerned with is exposing how movements like the Liberty Movement that is so great now, that Ron Paul has really become the figurehead for, how movements can be overtaken. Now, and we'll continue talking a little bit about Ayn Rand, and I do see Ayn Rand as maybe a bit of as a teocon, maybe as somebody who is really maybe not in the best interest of liberty, but it's this difficult thing. Maybe we have these allies that are close to liberty and maybe not, but we need to know what those points of demarcation are. So I want to continue talking about Ayn Rand, but another group that I look at in that same view is maybe the Koch brothers. And I know that, Dr. Gordon, you've written extensively about them, about the coctopus, or whatever they call them. But that, I think, is a crucial issue. How do we stay true to liberty when there are these other ideas pulling us? Because it's funny, Ayn Rand seemed to, with this David Kelly-Peikoff type of split, Peikoff seemed concerned that maybe objectivists would go over to the dark side of liberty, of libertarianism. Do you think that might have been a motive?
Yes, I think it did bother Peikoff that there was people who were advocating roughly similar ideas about the free market that were not accepting what he considered the proper philosophical foundations for the work. And they tend to be extremely negative about libertarians. I think, say, someone who wanted to enroll in one of their programs, they could enroll, say, if they were a socialist or didn't believe in the free market, they would probably take the person and try to convert him to their views. But if you were affiliated, say, with the Mises Institute or even with the Kelly Group, they wouldn't accept such a person as a student. So they think their basic view is that if you have the wrong philosophical foundations, then even if it sounds like you're defending liberty, you really aren't, because they tend to say, and I don't think this is right, they tend to say, well, if you don't, suppose you're in favor of liberty, free market, but you don't rely on their system, then they say, well, then your defense of liberty is just subjective preference on your part. You just say, I happen to like this, so you're just basing what you say on whims. You don't have any rational basis for what you're saying. So I think the attitude of the people, I think the Mises Institute would be, well, we think that there are various philosophical positions, including theirs, that you could use to defend liberty and the free market. So we don't think that you have to be committed to a particular philosophical view. We don't say, well, in order for us to ally with you, you have to accept this particular position about metaphysics or epistemology or ethics.
Well, and even beyond that, though, they would say that, and this was one of the things that really clued me in early on, because I like a lot of people, I really did devour her works when I was in my early 20s. But the thing that really clued me in was the fact of her aesthetics, that somehow you were and I'm just paraphrasing her wild use of adjectives, but that you were a sniveling weasel if you didn't like romanticism somehow. And what I find frustrating is that, you can be very pro-liberty and like maybe impressionist art,
Oh, yes, that's I'm not going to cover her aesthetics too much in the course, but you're very right. She had very distinctive views on aesthetics. She felt, just as she thinks that your political views are really determined by what your views on metaphysics and theory of knowledge are, she thought that in aesthetics, what the artist or writer is doing will reflect a certain philosophical vision. So I think she thought if you like the impressionist art wasn't very good because it would show you have the wrong view of how you form concepts from perception of the external world. You would other artistic movements of romanticism would be better because it would somehow show how ideas of certain kinds are important. So what she would do would be she'd try to find out what the worldview is that an artist was expressing, and that would be very important in her evaluation of the work. Sometimes she was willing to allow that some writers who had philosophy she considered incorrect were valuable because they were expressing a particular view. I think she thought Dostoevsky was a significant novelist, even though she rejected radically his religious view of the world, but in many cases, like say in discussing the novels of the French naturalist Émile Zola, she said, well, this is just the wrong view of the world, so his novels aren't really that good.
Now, do you expect to get objectivists signing up for your course? I would think you probably will get quite a few.
Yes, I do. I think that some of them might want to sign up to see whether they could show if I said anything critical. I was wrong. And I should say, my course isn't going to be saying she's all wrong. I thought she had interesting, valuable ideas in some areas, but I have kind of a mixed verdict on her. I've already gone into exchanges on one of the objectivist sites with some people who were criticizing me, and I've had answers to them. But I'm hoping now. It might be that they would stay away because they would say, well, if he's not one of us, then he doesn't understand the system, so we won't take the course. But there might be people who are objectivists who take the course, try to show that I'm misunderstanding what she said. I'm hoping to get a lot of them because as the course is set up, how much I get paid depends on the number of students I have, so I hope the more, the better.
So in some regard that, a nice vigorous debate would actually maybe drive more and more participation and make people more interested in the course as well, whether they're objectivist or non-objectivist.
Oh yes, it's always a lot of to see a fight. I mean, that's one of the attractions of wrestling or martial arts. One of your fields, you like to see a good battle.
Yeah. I mean, and it's not, and the thing is that I think this is the hard thing for people is they want to see the world in black and white, and sometimes people are 95% good, and they have some things that you're critical of and you don't agree with, and that's really being an individual. That's the ultimate expression of being an individualist, is having your own philosophy and maybe measuring it like, boy, Murray Rothbard was awesome or Thomas Sawes was awesome, but, on these couple things, maybe I have my own particular perspective, and so it is with Ayn Rand as well. I mean, if we can't hold these people up to scrutiny and criticism, what good are they, in my estimation?
Well, that's a very good point you raise. Now, see, this is one thing where the objectivists have a different view. You see, they would say, suppose you say, well, I'm giving you, when I give what I'm saying, I'm giving you the world from my perspective as it appears to me. Maybe to you you see things somewhat differently. They would say, no, if you can get an absolutely correct view of reality, and if you don't have that view, then you're just wrong. So they would say, we're not just giving you, say, how things seem to Ayn Rand, and then you could say, well, maybe I could look at von Mises or Sawes or some other writer and see how the world seemed to him, and then we get different perspectives on the world. They say, no, we can establish this is the correct view, and any other view that contradicts that is absolutely wrong.
Well, and having had some experience with these groups myself, I totally could see how, because you have not been anointed by whoever was anointed by Ayn Rand somehow to give this course, that somehow your perspective's not important. But on the other hand, from my perspective, here you are, a PhD in intellectual history, an incredibly well-read guy. You're better than probably her acolytes with regards to giving, quote unquote, an objective view of Ayn Rand and objectivism.
Well, they would certainly disagree. I think what they would say, and what they have said is, look, I haven't studied their system enough to understand it fully. If I did that, and if I did that with an unprejudiced mind, I would come to see that they're correct about things. And the problem I'm having is I can see what they're saying, but I don't, in at least some cases, see that you have to adopt the view they take. I mean, for example, they'll say they have a particular view of how we get concepts, how do we get our ideas. Say, how do you get the idea of the color red, or how do we get the idea of rabbits, and the idea that we have. They have a particular theory that we get this by, we see a number of concrete items that fall under that concept, and then we see what's similar in all these items, kind of abstract out the similarities. This is a particular philosophical theory of concepts, and what they tend to have a tough time realizing is that there are other theories, competing theories, and they seem to say, well, no, look, this is the way it is. This is how we acquire concepts. And if you say, why is it? They'll just say, no, look, this is how we acquire concepts. This is what a concept is. How could you possibly question that? And then, so that's why.
Well, and they seem to get caught up in rhetoric rather easily, and this is one thing that that I find particularly fascinating. And actually, I'm looking to update my Teocon book, and I'm going to include Ayn Rand in her more orthodox acolytes because, for example, when I was writing the book, I stumbled on the where I kind of took the title from. An homage was the Neocon titles, Neocon 1 and Neocon 2, which are large compendiums about the neoconservative movement, which has your writings in it as well, which I loved. But what I found interesting is when I was writing this book, there's this book called Neoconservatism, an obituary for an idea. Now, it's written by a guy named C. Bradley Thompson, but it's also written by a guy named Yaron Brook, who is the head of... He's the head of ARI, right? The Ayn Rand Institute. But he's also like a dual Israeli citizen. And the interesting thing that I noticed reading this book is there was not one single mention of Israel. Well, there was one, but it had nothing to do with neoconservatism. It was a very glaring omission in my mind. And so, maybe we're coming up on a break here, Doctor. I'd love to keep you. I know your time is valuable, but I'd like to get into maybe a little bit about neoconservatism and also the Koch brothers, if you can hang on for a little while.
Oh, yes, sure.
Okay, great. We're coming up on a long break. Come on back. We're with Dr. David Gordon from the Mises Institute, and we are going to talk about the Koch brothers and neoconservatism. Come on back.
AM 630, K-Talk. We live where you live. We shop where you shop. Thanks for supporting the sponsors of K-Talk Radio.
What does local search sound like? Some sound like this. Notice the telltale sound of sluggishness. And now, the sound of search by Dex. Notice the syncopation of laptop, mobile phone, and print directory. Joining with the pulse beat of local businesses. A smattering of painters here. A timpani of tire guys there. Now, a domain of pizza makers. A brass section of plumbers. A buzz of groomers. And a clattering of chefs, TV repairmen, and bakers. All joined in a cachet of sales and swelling into a great crescendo that ends in a triumphant, successful search, all conducted by you. Everything that makes your world hum is here, in the book, on the phone, or online at dexknows.com. Need it? Dex it.
Wake up without yuck in your lungs or the dark cloud of lung cancer or heart disease looming over your future. Have the energy and health you deserve by simply calling Salt Lake City Family Hypnosis at 801-738-5390. Forget what you've seen from TV and the movies. Hypnosis is powerful and natural and has been accepted by the American Medical Association since the 1950s. Our methods have proven time and again to be more effective than pills, patches, gum, and willpower for quitting smoking. If you've tried the rest, now call the best. Salt Lake City Family Hypnosis, 801-738-5390. That's Salt Lake City Family Hypnosis, 801-738-5390. Be sure to ask about our proven weight loss and natural breast enlargement programs. Visit us online at slchypnosis.com.
You're listening to Utah's first #1 talk station. K-Talk, AM 630, KTKK, Sandy, Salt Lake City. the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
CNN Radio, I'm Shelby Lynn. It's a rare appearance, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu making a speech before a joint session of Congress. But he did today, presenting his vision for peace in the Middle East. Netanyahu responded again to President Obama's suggestion last week that peace with the Palestinians should begin by returning to pre-1967 borders.
The border will be different than the one that existed on June 4th, 1967. Israel will not return to the indefensible boundaries of 1967.
Netanyahu also said a lasting peace involves the Palestinians recognizing the Jewish state's right to exist. But PLO representative to the U.S., Mon Erekat, says they have repeatedly recognized Israel as a state.
Our position is clear. We recognize the state of Israel in 1988, in 1993, in 1996, in 1998. We recognize the state of Israel.
Many U.S. administrations have failed in attempts at creating a lasting Middle East peace agreement and a Palestinian state. 7 international companies are accused of ignoring sanctions against Iran. Now, Deputy Secretary of State James Steinberg says the U.S. is imposing sanctions directly against the companies.
All of these companies have engaged in activities related to the supply of refined petroleum products to Iran, including the direct supply of gasoline and related products.
The companies are located in Iran, the United Arab Emirates, Israel, Monaco, and Venezuela State Oil Company.
We are still in search and rescue mode and will be for the foreseeable future.
Joplin, Missouri City Manager Mark Rohr, an estimated 1,500 people are missing in the aftermath of Sunday's violent tornado. 118 are now confirmed dead. The Obamas are dining with the Queen of England in a state dinner at Buckingham Palace this hour. Also in attendance at the dinner, Prince Charles and Camilla. For News Anytime, go to CNN.com. This is CNN Radio.
And now, Walmart's countdown to Memorial Day. Low price tips to make over your home. This weekend's project, bug barricades.
Friends and family aren't the only ones descending on your house for Memorial Day. Armies of insects are too. So stock up on low-priced defensive forces at Walmart. Like Spectracide Bug Stop Easy Action Sprayer. $13.74 gets you 1.3 gallons of bug-stopping power. So you don't have to worry about any unwanted guests of the bug variety. Thanks to Walmart's low prices every day on everything. Save money. Live better. Walmart.
If you've ever wanted to design your own ring, there's only one place to go.
That's Jared!
At Jared, the Galleria of Jewelry, it's easy to create a ring that's yours and yours alone. First, choose from hundreds of beautiful settings. Then select from thousands of certified diamonds, including the Peerless Diamond, the Ideal Cut Diamond, and the spectacular Leo Artisan, both exclusively at Jared.
It can only be Jared!
Find a Jared store or shop anytime at jared.com.
I got to gold with this prescription.
We got to gold with mouthwash.
Go gold with your Wellness Plus card and you'll get 20% off your entire Rite Aid store for a year. Every purchase gets you closer. Every prescription gets you closer, faster. No other pharmacy gives you more value.
We saved almost $100 since we turned gold.
So how are you going to get to gold? Enroll in Wellness Plus in-store or at RiteAid.com. That's the value of wellness. Certain limitations apply. Government-funded prescriptions and prescriptions dispensed in New York and New Jersey and certain non-prescription items are not eligible. See your local Rite Aid for details.
For contractors looking to cut costs, the Home Depot is a great place to start, where right now, all special order Anderson windows and patio doors are 10% off. That's a nice price break on one of the most trusted names in windows, which means you can build with the best quality products and still lower your bids, which will help you win more business so you can grow a stronger one. More saving, more doing. That's the power of
Have
Home
you ever
Depot.
felt that your smile is the least attractive part of your body? Did you ever dream of having a smile makeover but just couldn't afford it? If so, you are a perfect candidate for the new technique called Instant Smile Makeover. Recent advances in technology can give you straight, white teeth that will look beautiful for a lifetime without the need for braces, bleaching, drilling, or numbing. The new techniques can fix crooked teeth and make them straight in one visit. Don't be embarrassed about your smile any longer. Sometimes Mother Nature just needs a little help. Call for a free consultation. Call 801-254-0835. That's 801-254-0835.
what you doing here?
I'm redistributing the wealth. I learned in school spreading the wealth is good for everyone.
Well, I learned from real life that it's not. In fact, there's a word for it. It's called theft.
Hi, this is Representative Carl Wimmer. I believe in America and fighting for the principles we need to return her to glory. I am partnering with Buy Back America to bring you a special screening of I Want Your Money, one of the most politically charged films of this era. This is a must-see film for every American who loves this country. This film was so powerful that many in Washington don't want you to see it, but you will see it in the original director's cut. Join us Thursday, May 26th at 6:30 p.m. for the screening and reception. A minimum donation of $15 will benefit the Buy Back America bus tour. Call today, 801-253-4883. That number again is 801-253-4883, or email tim@buybackamerica.com.
I Want Your Money. A controversial look at government spending. Coming this fall.
Exposing politics as pro wrestling. Welcome to Mental Self-Defense Radio and the Jake Shannon Radio program. Now, here's your host, Jake Shannon.
5-1, baby. 1 and 5.
Welcome back, Mental Self-Defense Radio. I'm your host, Jake Shannon. We're here in Hour 2. We are very lucky to be joined by David Gordon, PhD, from the Mises Institute. Are you still there with us, Dr. Gordon?
Yes, hi, Jake. I'm still here.
Hey, thanks for the patience. I know that's a long break there between the 2 hours. Before the break, though, we obviously were talking about this exciting new course that you're going to be offering, giving a, if I dare say it, I'm sure all my objectivist friends will be on my case for saying this, but an objective view of Ayn Rand. In the sense that you're not actually one of her acolytes or groupies. You're a guy with a PhD in intellectual history, really reviewing and giving serious thought to her ideas. If people want to sign up for that class, Mises.org, is that the best place to go?
Yes, that's right. They go to Mises.org and then just go to, you'll see where it says Mises Academy, and then you can enroll in the course.
Great. And, I mean, you're just so prolific, too. I was listening to your history of political thought. That I think that's available on MP3 or something over at Mises.org as well. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. You can also see it on YouTube.
Now, for me, I'm I'm a hypnotist. I'm interested in self-defense, and I kind of put that together, and here we are, mental self-defense, okay? And I'm also a hardcore libertarian, or at least I like to think so. And in where my interests intersect, I wrote this book, Teocond, and of which I felt honored that you wrote the foreword. I mean, it really was amazing. That's an honor for me. But in the course of that research, and, I know that you do a book review, the Mises Review as well. Have you read this book by Bradley Thompson and Yaron Brook?
Yes. In fact, I did a very brief review of it for American Conservative magazine, and I might do a longer review for the Mises Review. The author, Thompson's been in email correspondence with me. Basically, he's, of course, interested in Leo Strauss, and he has some very interesting things to say about Strauss. Now, you raised a point I really hadn't thought about much, but it's an interesting one. You say there's a chapter on foreign policy in the book, which is written by Yaron Brook, who's the head of the Ayn Rand Institute. And, you say he doesn't really talk about Israel much. Now, that's an interesting point, you see, because one of the common criticisms of the neocons is that they tend to, their policies seem very much influenced by what they think is best for Israel. There's some concern, are they trying to, would this always be best for the United States, even if it is best for Israel? So they've been criticized. Say some people have said, well, they were trying to defend the Iraq War, get us into war with Iraq, because Saddam Hussein was a big enemy of Israel, and they thought it would be very desirable to get rid of him. But so they were urging a war against him, but it doesn't seem like we had any particular interest in getting involved in a big
Well, and
struggle
it
there.
seems like to me anybody who ever writes about neoconservatism, it seems very, very clear from people over at that magazine, the one you did the review for, that there is this strong tie between neoconservatives and this push for Israel in with regards to foreign policy, as opposed to, say, Ron Paul's view that, hey, it's not our business. You guys just do your own thing, and we'll try to focus on our thing, and let's all just get along and be peaceful. Instead, Israel is like one of the biggest recipients of foreign aid from the United States.
Yes. Well, see, the thing where in that chapter, you see, they have their criticism. They have some criticism of the neocons, but they say, well, the neocons talk about spreading democracy to various countries. They say this is an altruistic idea. See, they're very much opposed to altruism, the view that our duty is to sacrifice ourselves for other people. They say, no, what you're supposed to do is act in your own self-interest. So they say, look, we don't have a duty to bring democracy to other people. So they're critical for neocons for that respect, but they don't criticize them for being unduly pro-Israel, because as it happens, Rand herself was very pro-Israel, not on the grounds that we have to spread democracy to other people, but she happened to, we could ask, does this really follow from her philosophical system? But it happened to be that she was pro-Israel. What she basically said was the Israelis are civilized and they're supporting reason, whereas the surrounding Arabs are basically primitives and we don't have to pay much attention to them. So she was very pro-Israel. So in this book, they wouldn't criticize the neocons for being too pro-Israel, because they themselves, particularly Brooke, I don't know what Thompson's views are on foreign policy, on Israel particularly, but I presume they're the same as Brooke, but they think supporting Israel is a very good idea, so they wouldn't be saying, here's another thing wrong or a big thing wrong with the neocons, that they're being influenced by the foreign policy of a different country. They would say that isn't something wrong about them, so they're not going to stress that.
But what's so strange about that book is just the complete glaring lack of anything about Israel, given the fact that anytime you talk about neoconservatism, there is going to be a pro position or a con position, and they don't even they just pretend like there's nothing to do with it whatsoever. In the book,
yes,
at least.
That is a very good point that I hadn't really thought about. I mean, it might be they just thought it was too controversial to go into or something, or might be from their point of view the ultimate failing of neoconservatism is grounded in what they consider the wrong philosophy, namely that of Leo Strauss, and they wanted to confine themselves to supporting that. But it is a good point he raised. In other areas, say on domestic policy, they do have discussions of what's wrong with neocon domestic policy. They say, well, they don't really support this free market consistently. They don't have a notion of individual rights, which I think is a very good point. But I mean, they don't say all they say in foreign policy is that the U.S. should act in just what's our own interest. We shouldn't get involved in a war unless we think that there's some threat to us. We shouldn't get involved in a war just
well,
because.
And it seems to me interesting that Rand would not allow Murray Rothbard, who also was very much critical of Israel, but Murray Rothbard, who came from a Jewish background and was critical of Israel and the philosophy of Zionism, that Rand would not allow him to be a part of her cult because his wife wouldn't be atheist. And here we have in Israel a theocracy without a Bill of Rights. And how is that congruent with her philosophy? I just don't see it. It makes no sense to me. It's a contradiction which, in her words, shouldn't exist.
Yes, that is an interesting point. I mean, I think she never, other than indicating likes Israel, she never really said much about them. I mean, she was, say, I remember she was very critical of Ronald Reagan and some of the Republicans because they were unsympathetic to legalized abortion, and she said, well, this is a religious view, you know, we support it on religious grounds, so this is a very wrong thing to have. But I mean, she didn't address, I think she tended not to say all that much about Israel. Excuse me.
Yeah, that seems to be a very glaring problem with that book. I actually enjoyed the rest of the book. I thought that they did a decent job, again, from an objectivist kind of perspective. And it just seemed glaring because they had done enough research in the other areas, and especially given the fact that the co-author is an Israeli citizen or a dual citizen or something of that nature. He was part of I think the Israeli Defense Force at some point. So very, very interesting to me. And again, speaking of these kind of people that run in the same circles that may not really be our allies with regards to the fight for liberty, and I'm not saying people who are objectivists aren't, because again, there are those like the David Kelly type of objectivists from the Atlas Society that are much more open. I remember I read one of their magazines recently, and they had an article on an entrepreneur who's a tattoo entrepreneur, and he's tattooed on his face and whatnot, and I could never see that really being promoted by the other more orthodox Ayn Rand Institute.
Oh, probably left people in stitches.
But, you know, another group of guys that I think causes confusion for people who are in liberty but maybe not devoting their careers to it or, you know, that level of participation are the Koch brothers. And maybe you could just, you know much more about them than I do. I included a small section on them in my book, in the Kochtopus, but maybe you could succinctly tell people about who the Koch brothers are and why they're relevant, especially to us as libertarians.
Oh, well, Charles and David Koch are among the wealthiest people in the world. They're billionaires, and they were interested in libertarianism for a very long time, I think going back to the late 1950s. Charles Koch in particular was very close to Murray Rothbard at one time, and when the Cato Institute was set up in 1977 in San Francisco, it was supposed to be promoting Rothbardian ideas, but after a few years, there were some conflicts that developed between various people in the Cato Institute, and in Rothbard's view, they started to deviate from the program he wanted. So because of these splits, Charles Koch tried to suppress Rothbard's views, and when Rothbard had to leave the Cato Institute, and when Lou Rockwell set up the Mises Institute, the Cato Institute was very critical of the Mises Institute and doesn't encourage it at all. And there's a lot of bad feeling between the Cato Institute and Mises Institute that we at the Mises Institute think they're not really giving a good approach to libertarians. So the basic problem we see with the Koch brothers is because of their enormous wealth, they give a certain amount of money and they'll set up various groups, but they want to control the groups. So very often, say if you have people with a great deal of money, they'll want to be in control of things.
Which is very much the opposite of maybe more of a Hayekian type of libertarianism that's just spontaneous.
Yeah, yes, I mean they'll say, Charles Koch has written. He says, well, he likes in management a style where you rely on what the employees are doing. You don't try to impose from the top down. But it
Yeah,
seems
they
like,
actually have a whole book out, The Science of Success. It's like on what they call market-based management, right? Something where they're trying to take advantage of the market forces to build a better management system.
But they, in their practice in the libertarian organization, they have a pretty tight control of what the agenda is. So they tend to think that groups, when they would say they wouldn't like Ron Paul too much because they'll say he's not really an agreement.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, this conflict between the Ron Paul types and the Beltway libertarians.
Yeah.
When we come back after the break, maybe you could tell us a little bit about how Ron Paul fits into the whole scene.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Talking with David Gordon, PhD from the Mises Institute. Come on back.
AM 630, K-Talk. Utah's oldest, most trusted talk station.
Consumer alert! Osama bin Laden's death is being used by scammers to infect your computer and steal your information. Countless people have received emails and website links and Facebook messages promising pictures of the slain terrorist. When you click on these links or files, they can take you to a fake website that can steal your private information or infect your computer. These scams are very common whenever a breaking news event happens. So if your computer's acting odd or running slow or crashing, you might be infected. At PC Laptops, we can fix any brand of computer. In fact, we're so great at it that if we can't fix or upgrade your computer, we'll buy it from you. And here's the great news. Bring in your computer, no matter what brand it is, in any one of our 9 locations, and we'll run a free evaluation, virus, and spyware scan on your computer. The scan is 100% free. So get into any one of our 9 locations right now or call us at 1-877-596-SAVE or check us out at PCLaptops.com. PC Laptops offers a discount to active or retired U.S. military personnel. At PC Laptops, we really love you.
Tune in each weekday afternoon at 4 for Drive Time Live, the Mills Crenshaw Show, brought to you by efoodsdirect.com/Mills, offering a full range of options from totally self-contained 2-week emergency supplies to a full year's supply. efoodsdirect.com/Mills.
Let's be real. Smoking sucks. It's a nasty, expensive, unattractive, and thoroughly unhealthy habit. There's the acrid smell in your clothes and on your breath. Yuck. Not to mention the increased health risk that cigarette smoke presents to those nearest and dearest to you. Call Salt Lake City Family Hypnosis now for your free consultation to learn how you can quit today. 801-738-5390. That's Salt Lake City Family Hypnosis, 801-738-5390.
Hi, my name is David Vance, and I'm working on a project for my Eagle Scout Award, and I need your help. I want to retire that beautiful old flag of yours with dignity and respect. And if your flag has a story or interesting history, please let me know, and we will read it at the retirement ceremony, June 1st, 2011. Please call for drop-off locations, or I will come by and pick it up. Call 801-254-0070. That's 801-254-0070.
The voice of Utah. AM 630 K-Talk.
K-Talk.com.
Number 1 for the most live, local, two-way talk.
Hello, it's me. I've thought about us for a long, long time.
Welcome back, Mental Self-Defense Radio. I'm your host, Jake Shannon. I've got on the line one of the smartest guys out there, possibly the smartest guy in the Liberty Movement. I know that's a big, there's a lot of smart people out there. David Gordon, PhD, we're talking to him. We spent the first hour really talking about this new course on Ayn Rand that he's going to be teaching. Now, he's got a PhD in intellectual history. Guys like Tom Woods, Murray Rothbard praise him. So certainly head over to Mises.org, MISES.org, and find that course there. Is it part of the Mises Academy, Dr. Gordon?
That's right, yes. Just go to Mises Academy and then you'll see it.
So go over, sign up. It's also a good thing because it helps Dr. Gordon, and he's a guy who definitely deserves our support. Now, before the commercial break, we were talking a little bit with regards to this strange conflict within the liberty movement between these Koch brothers, which are these wealthy billionaires who finance a lot of the think tanks, and then on the other hand, the strain of libertarianism that is not financed, I guess, is more of an organic grassroots, authentic grassroots, as opposed to astroturfing, which is a term that's thrown around a lot with regards to the Koch brothers. Where does Ron Paul factor in on all this? Because I have to say, I was so excited to see Ron Paul run, because listening, again, as somebody who's obsessed, maybe too obsessed, but persistently obsessed with rhetoric and language and libertarianism, all his arguments are very Rothbardian, Ron Paul's.
Oh, yes. Well, you see, he knew Rothbard very well, and Rothbard thought highly of him and supported him. And you see, what I think there are really two main reasons the Koch brothers wouldn't support Ron Paul. They're not that overtly hostile to him, but I think there'd be two main reasons that they would have against him. First of all, probably the most important things I mentioned before, they're extremely opposed to the Lew Rockwell and the Mises Institute. And Lew Rockwell was the principal person really setting up the Ron Paul movement. He worked as Ron Paul's main aide for a while, and he's really the main person who set the movement up. So they would think that Ron Paul is really in league with one of the people they regard as their biggest enemy. And then also, they, as you mentioned before the break, they're what they call beltway. I think they're kind of a very sophisticated people, kind of cosmopolitan. They like people from the New York and Washington, kind of the big cities, the university towns, and they, I think, regard Ron Paul, if you talk to him, as I have known somewhat, he's a very intelligent person, but they see him kind of as something of a hick, somebody who's kind of one of these people out there from the red states. He's a populist. He's not really one of the international set or the...
and meanwhile, he's got a medical degree, which none of them have, which is incredibly difficult to go through that process. And additionally, he's been in the meat grinder, seeing the sausage being made, as Bismarck might say, for decades. So he really has more insight and he's probably smarter than any of these guys.
Oh, yes. I mean, he's a very knowledgeable person. I mean, when he's in his congressional hearings, he can take on and get the better of Bernanke and Alan Greenspan. I mean, he can take on anybody. Hillary Clinton, they can't really stand up to him. But I think probably the Koch brothers would say, well, this is someone really we can't control, and he's not giving the image they really want to have. So I've seen on the David Bose, who's I think the vice president at Cato, has said something like, well, Gary Johnson is really much better as a libertarian candidate than Ron Paul. So I mean, they haven't come out and said they really don't like Ron Paul. Although the last time he ran, some of the people at Cato were very sympathetic. There was a kind of a smear campaign against Ron Paul based on this certain newsletters that he put out with Lew Rockwell. So they were publicizing these newsletters, even though it was hurting Ron Paul as a candidate. They would say, so they would prefer, even if they seem to prefer to try to injure the Ron Paul candidacy, even if it would be advancing libertarianism, to have him, just because it would be supporting the Lew Rockwell group, which they don't like.
Well, and it's interesting because despite all of their money, and they have done good stuff for libertarianism. I mean, I'm not saying that they are on par with Stalin or something like that. I mean, they've done some incredible stuff. But literally, Ron Paul, and as somebody who's been, and I know you've been libertarian for far longer than I, but, I've been libertarian for about 2 decades now, and I've never seen the ideas of liberty more readily accepted and more mainstream or popular than as a result of the Ron Paul presidential campaign in 2008. I've never seen it like this ever before, and it's frustrating because you'd think if they really do care about the ideas of liberty, they just put all that aside and say, hey, you know what? He's rolling. He's really doing something.
Well, yes. Unfortunately, they don't see it that way. I mean, Ron Paul has been tremendously effective, and he's very good at getting people interested in liberty. He's a very good person. But I mean, I think, as I say, they view him as really not their sort of person. He's sort of not really one of us, so they don't want him.
Yeah, that's really too bad. And so the funny thing that I find too is you see somebody like a Glenn Beck, and he's always up there with his chalkboard and he's drawing these pictures about how follow the money back to George Soros. How come the Koch brothers never show up on his chalkboard?
Well, that's a very good question. When you mentioned Soros was the Cato Institute, they actually invited Soros to be on one of their programs. You see, there was a new edition of Friedrich Hayek's book, Constitution of Liberty, that came out. It was edited by my great friend Ronald Hammaway. So they had a program at Cato on this, and they had a panel of 3 people to discuss Hayek. And one of them was Soros, and Hammaway was telling me he didn't want Soros on the panel, but Bose insisted on having him. And you wonder, well, they're supposed to be a libertarian group. Why would they have George Soros on as one of the people to talk about Hayek? It was clear, if you can watch the show on YouTube, he really isn't that familiar with Hayek's ideas, but I guess they like being associated with some extremely prominent figure, even if he has very
doesn't Soros,
non-free-market views.
Isn't Soros some sort of huge fan of Karl Popper and his work?
Yes, that's right. Yes, and Popper was a friend of Hayek. They were very close, but I mean, Soros definitely does not have views similar to Hayek on the free market. He's read some Hayek, but I mean, he's very much not a libertarian. So, I mean, I think the Cato people would say, well, certainly Soros is wrong about a lot of things, but really it's good to be associated, get someone who's very prominent like that associated with us. And at the Mises Institute, we would say, well, this isn't the sort of person we really want to get close to. Of course, we don't really have a chance to do so, but I mean, this isn't the sort we're trying to cultivate at all.
And it's fascinating stuff, So, and I'm seeing kind of, and again, there's these types. Like, I look at Ayn Rand, and it's like, well, ooh, she's good, but there's these problems. And then I look at the Kochs. They're good, but then they got these serious problems. And then I look at somebody like a Milton Friedman. And, his rhetoric was great, but boy, that guy had a couple whoppers that were pretty bad for the cause of liberty. Like, most people don't know that he invented the withholding tax.
That was during World War II. Yes, and I mean, he continued to say afterwards he felt he'd done the right thing in inventing the withholding tax, that it was essential to raise money during World War II, and that this was a good way to do it. So he didn't repent of what he'd done. But I mean, he admitted that was what he did, but he thought he'd done the right thing.
Well, and didn't Rothbard call him an efficiency expert for the state or something?
Yes. I mean, what sometimes people will argue for certain libertarian ideas. They'll say, well, look, it just happens to be the case that the free market is better suited to achieve certain goals than socialism. But according to the way Rothbard viewed it, this doesn't reflect a genuine commitment to liberty. It was like, before I came on your program, I happened to hear the tail end of something you were talking about. Some judge had apparently sold people to private prisons, or sent people to private prisons. So we see here, say it turned out private prisons were more efficient than having the government take them over correctly, handle them directly. That wouldn't show. If you favored private prisons, you're in favor of liberty. You would just be saying they would work better to achieve certain government goals better than having the government take over directly. But have a commitment for liberty, you have to say, well, people have the right to lead their own lives without having others interfere with them, as long as they don't coerce other people. Everyone should be left alone. And just to say, if you favor a certain program being left to private hands because they'll produce more or they'll do it more efficiently than the government would do directly, doesn't show you're committed to libertarian philosophy.
Well, and in that case, if we proceed on the premise that government is a monopoly on coercion, I don't want market forces anywhere near the government. I don't want them more efficient with their coercion.
Yes. I mean, they used to have, in France before the French Revolution, there were what they called tax farmers, where, say, the government wanted to raise a certain amount of money in taxes. What they would do would be not to send out government agents to collect the taxes, but they would sell the right to collect taxes for some very large amount to private people. And then these private people would have a right to go out and collect taxes from people. So they were, the private people would be very good at doing this because that would be how they'd make money. If you have a government system doing it, the government would just be, like say we have the IRS today, they get the same salary even if, say, a lot of people don't pay their taxes. So they don't have such an incentive to go after people, make sure they paid every last penny. But if you have a private company doing it, it's to their advantage to try to get you to pay as much as possible because they've paid a certain fee, an enormous amount of money to the government to have the right to collect taxes. So they want to try to get as much as possible so they can make money on their deal. So here, the market is more efficient, but we don't want efficiency in certain areas.
Yeah, it's something that it's, again, a subtle point that maybe not a lot of people think about. And, the other thing is, I remember reading somewhere Friedman had said that he gives lip service to the market or whatnot, but then he had said something so crazy. He said that the best form of government is a benevolent dictatorship.
Oh, I hadn't seen that quotation. I mean, I could see how someone with his views might think that. He might say, well, here's a list of the best policies we have. Now, if someone would just put those in, it really doesn't matter what the political method is by which these are, as long as we have a right measure. So there's quite a bit of dispute about this, but there's some people who say, well, Friedman was willing to support the Pinochet dictatorship just because they seem to be having certain, in Chile, because they seem to be having certain free market measures in privatizing Social Security. So, I mean, they dispute exactly how much support he gave him, but it might be an illustration that he's saying, look, even if this guy is a dictator, as long as he's putting in the right measures, that's, so what? That's all right.
Well, and in his role as kind of the guru of the monetarist school of economics, he stood in stark opposition to the Austrian economic methodology. One, he supported a Federal Reserve, and two, he felt mathematical methods were the way to go with regards to economic questions.
Yes. I mean, Hayek was very critical of him on an economic method. He thought that Friedman had a famous article, I think came out in 1951, called The Methodology of Positive Economics, kind of defending a logical positivist approach to study economics, where economics is really just like the physical sciences and methods. I think Hayek thought that was as dangerous as Keynes's book, The General Theory, came out in 1936, and he thought that was, from its own point of view, almost as bad as Keynes's book. But they agreed in many areas of practical policy, but Hayek thought he was not good on economic methodology. I'll tell you a great story I heard from Jeremy Shearmore, who was Karl Popper's research assistant. He said Popper was once visiting Stanford, and Friedman gave a lecture there.
Hey, Dr. Gordon, I hate to do this to you, but I can't control these breaks. Maybe come after the break. This story about Karl Popper and Milton Friedman. Very fascinating stuff. I love it. Come on, Brad. We're talking with David Gordon from the Mises Institute.
AM 630, K-Talk, where patriots come to cheer and progressives run in fear.
63% of Americans are overweight. If you've decided it's time to leave your flab behind, HipFit Weight Loss is for you. HipFit changes habits. Lose the bad habits, lose the weight. HipFit is guaranteed to make your weight loss successful and has absolutely no health risks. HipFit students are not required to count calories, weigh portions, or buy specialty food. Start losing weight immediately. Call 801-635-4488. HipFit is conveniently located at Salt Lake City Family Hypnosis. Ask about our Guaranteed to Stop Smoking program. 801-635-4488.
Are you a baby boomer or an empty nester? Were you born between 1946 and 1960? If so, you are a perfect candidate for the new techniques called tooth-conserving dentistry. These new techniques help eliminate the need for root canals, crowns, or caps, even if your teeth are already damaged or have large fillings. The new techniques can even replace missing teeth without dentures, partials, or bridges. Call for a free consultation. 801-254-0835. That's 801-254-0835.
Tune in each weekday afternoon at 4 for Drive Time Live, the Mills Crenshaw Show, brought to you by efoodsdirect.com/Mills. Protecting the people you love with long-lasting home food storage. efoodsdirect.com/Mills.
The voice of Utah. AM 630 K-Talk.
K-Talk.com.
#1 for the most live, local, two-way talk.
Mental Self-Defense Radio. I'm your host, Jake Shannon. Now, look, I try my very best to bring you the people who I think are the smartest people out there. You know, if you think I'm smart, I'm trying to bring people that I think are smart. And today, we've been very lucky. He's been very generous with his time. We have David Gordon, PhD, from the Mises Institute. Are you still with us, Dr. Gordon?
Oh, yes. Hi, Jake. I'm still here.
Well, I'm glad because I was absolutely riveted until that stupid commercial. And I love our sponsors. Please, sponsors, I love you. But I was riveted by this story you were about to get into between that was Jeremy Shearmore, right, Popper's assistant, who was recanting a story, but that something that happened between Popper and Milton Friedman?
Yes. Well, the story was Friedman was giving a talk on at Stanford, and then Popper was there, and Popper turned to someone after Friedman had spoken. He said, "Well, he's not very good, is he?"
Wow. And for those who don't understand who Karl Popper is or was, Karl Popper was probably the preeminent philosopher of science of the 20th century, which is meaning he was thinking about the thoughts that people who go around in the lab coats and call themselves scientists, they thought he was particularly brilliant because he came up with a concept called that we routinely call falsification nowadays.
Yes, that's right. He wrote a famous book, Logic of Scientific Discovery, which in 1959 was his most influential book. It had come out in the German edition in Vienna around 1934. But he see, even though Friedman thought he read Popper, Popper clearly didn't think he'd gotten the right message, and Popper wasn't impressed by him at all.
Now, Dr. Gordon, I can barely hear you. Is the receiver close to your mouth?
Yes, I'm sorry. I say clearly Popper wasn't impressed by him at all. He thought he really didn't know the philosophy very well.
And now Hayek, F.A. Hayek, who did share the Nobel, who had a Nobel Prize just like Friedman, but Hayek and Popper were friends, and in fact, wasn't Hayek related to Ludwig Wittgenstein?
Yes, that's right. I think they were cousins. I'm not sure what sort of cousins, but they were cousins, and they had a few meetings. They weren't friends, but they knew each other. I think Hayek saw Wittgenstein in Cambridge on a few occasions, and they were on a train. They were on the same train once in England and had a bit of a conversation. So they did know each other.
Now, I'm going to take advantage of this. This might totally, my listeners might totally have no clue what I'm talking about, but it's very seldom that I get the chance to ask somebody of your intellectual caliber a question like this. How would you compare, and this is relevant, bear with me, this is relevant to your course, this Objectivism and Ayn Rand course that you're teaching at the Mises Academy. Again, people who are interested, go to Mises.org. Check out the Mises Academy there. Look for David Gordon's course on Ayn Rand and objectivism, and I would argue that it's actually an objective view, not in the sense of what an objectivist would call objective, but in the sense that it's dispassionate. It's not caught up in all the hoo-ha. I would highly recommend it. Now, that all said, how would you, because we're talking about Hayek, and then we were earlier talking about David Kelly, how would you look at the two books that they offered, The Sensory Order, which was Hayek's first book, which had to do with the same subject of David Kelly's book, Evidence of the Senses? Or is there any kind of connection between the two other than the subject matter?
Well, they have, yes, they're related in the sense that they're talking about a similar subject, how the mind perceives reality. They have very different theories. You see what...
Because you were saying Kelly was a direct realist, right?
Yes, that's right. And Hayek isn't. Hayek is more in the tradition of Immanuel Kant, and what he says in Sensory Order is basically what we're doing in knowledge is classifying things in various categories. And really, it's kind of, in one sense, an odd view. The classifications are just of lower-level classifications, and this just goes on indefinitely. So there's a sort of, we're getting input from the world on our sense organs, but there isn't some sort of direct perception of objects. All we have are classifications and put into higher classifications. And he seems to be taking thought as really a kind of classification, and sort of a lot of this is taking place unconsciously. So it's an unusual system. It would be very much different from the Kelly's view, the objectivist thing. In the Kelly's view, sort of the world is really, we kind of get the condensed pictures of things. We see the world directly. We see certain objects, then we abstract from the mind. Gets kind of a condensed view of these objects. We'll get a kind of a concept out of it. We'll drop, say, we see a lot of triangles. We can see all sorts of shapes and sizes. We can see, well, what do they all have in common? They're triangular shape. So we get the concept of a triangle. Then we can put different concepts together and get statements or propositions about them. And so we can kind of build up a picture of the world. And so it's really what we're doing in knowing things is kind of copying the world in a certain sense. The world is kind of imprinting itself on us, whereas Hayek is, no, we're not really in direct access to the world. We're just classifying things in various ways.
And what I find interesting is that for Ayn Rand, Immanuel Kant was the big philosophical villain.
Yes, that's right. And Hayek thought he was one of the greatest figures of all time. See, what Rand said is, what's wrong with Kant is, she said, well, he thought that we have direct access to reality. We only see reality under certain categories that the mind imposes on reality. So she sees, I don't think this is a correct interpretation of Kant, but she basically sees him as really thinking we can make things up according to our own will. I don't think it's what Kant said, but this is what
she's misinterpreting Kant to be some sort of subjective in the sense that reality doesn't exist, that we could just fantasize whatever.
Yeah. So she sees in the book by her follower Leonard Peikoff called Ominous Parallels, he really traces the Nazis to this idea. He said, well, the Nazis believed that you could really create a new reality just by the force of will. So if you said to the Nazis, look, there isn't any basis for your racial theories, they'd say, it's not a matter of reason, we're just thinking emotionally, this is the way we feel about things. And she thinks that kind of view really stems from Kant's influence.
Which, of course, I think most people who understand Kant would see that as a complete misunderstanding of what he was actually saying.
Yes, because he wasn't saying that we make up these categories. He thought these were necessary for thought. It isn't that people say, it isn't something like you would say, well, I just don't like certain races, so I'm going to decide that these groups are inferior. It would just be, there are certain necessary conditions on thought, and they're not ones that you consciously make up at all. So I don't think this Peikoff view is a really good understanding. I wrote a review of Peikoff's book, I think came out in 1980, and it got me in tremendous trouble with some of the objectivists. They were very upset with my review.
Well, and I could see why you would want to write something critical of that, because it seems that the very fact that both Ayn Rand and F.A. Hayek have written bestsellers that really champion the cause of liberty, that would actually be a refutation of Ayn Rand's whole philosophical system, that you have to be a part of this rigid objectivist epistemological view of the world, otherwise you're a tyrant. And I don't think anybody in their right mind would ever ascribe that kind of mentality to F.A. Hayek.
Well, that's a very interesting point. One thing along there that although Rand thought highly of Mises as an economist, she didn't care for Hayek at all. She really thought he was terrible, and she viewed him as pretty much of a socialist and irrationalist. So she had no use for Hayek at all. She hated Hayek.
Yeah, she's certainly an interesting character. I'm very interested to see how you lay out her philosophy and present it. That's why I wanted to have you on the show, is to get you to promote this, because she is so popular right now with that movie coming out, and there's all kinds of great, press and whatnot. It might be a good time to clue people into the more subtle parts, not just getting caught up with the glitz and glamour, but how do we look at this author and this champion of liberty critically?
Oh yes, I think that's what I'm trying to hope to achieve in the course. I hope I can do it, and it's very kind of you to encourage people to enroll for it. I appreciate it.
And you encourage people that, whether they're orthodox or more open-ended objectivists, anybody should join in, huh? You're not.
Oh yes. Anyone, everyone's welcome. I mean, if you think I'm wrong, that's philosophical arguments are a lot of fun. So I'd be glad to try to engage in them. I mean, I could well be wrong. So if you can convince me of that, that's fine.
And again, if you're interested in signing up for Dr. Gordon's class, just go to Mises.org. Go there, and then you said there's like a link. Is it right on the front page, or how do they get there?
Yes, you'll see it on the front page. It says Mises Academy, and then you just click on that. You can see how to get into the course.
Okay, and you said the course is June 16th?
That's right.
Through July 21st.
That's right.
Now, how does this work? If it's an online lecture, you know, maybe people are a little freaked out, like, oh, I got to actually be there. I mean, I've been a part of it, but maybe you can explain it better. It's basically
you don't
video
have to be,
and chat and all kinds of stuff, right?
Yeah, you don't have to be there for the lecture. What it is if you on your computer, you'll be able to see the lecture. It's if you're in the class, you can download it at any time you want once it's given. Now, if you go to the lecture, if you're there live, then there's a chat room where you can ask questions or get into debates. When I'm lecturing, I see people just type in things, and then I can answer them. I can't hear what the students are saying. They can hear what I'm saying, but I see what they're typing in. The students can see what the people are typing in.
So really, in the same way that if I were at a lecture hall in my university and you were there giving a lecture at the podium, I could raise my hand and say, Dr. Gordon, what about XYZ? And you could rebut or talk about the issue. So it's the same thing. It's just digital.
Yes, and then also, supposing you can't come to the live lecture, if you want to ask questions, then there's a forum where on the class site you just send in your questions, and then I can answer them.
Oh, great! So it's even better than being in person because, you know, as most people do, life comes up. You've got kids or you've got maybe a job. You can't be there when the live. You can still get in touch with you, ask questions, and you could probably review if you're part of the class, right? You can review the lecture at any time.
Yes, you can keep listening to the lecture. And I mean, once you're in the class, you can download the lecture. You can have access to it even after the class is over. I mean, when the course is completed, you'll still be able to listen to the lecture if you want. So it's yours once you're in the course, as long as you just download it and then you've got it.
Well, that's great. And you've done several of these before. I know I participated in your class on logic, and you've done several before this as well.
Yeah, yes, that's right. I think this one will be my fourth course for them. And I'm giving one after that on libertarianism and contemporary philosophy.
Oh, wow. Fascinating stuff. So, and if people want to follow you on the Mises Review, how do they get to read your book reviews?
Well, then you just can go to Mises' site and click on literature, and then under journals, you'll see Mises Review. I'm rather behind in my reviews, and I'm hoping to get some out soon. So all you do is go to Mises Review under literature, and then you'll see my reviews.
Well, I certainly look forward to them. Not any pressure. I know that you're recuperating and you've got a life and whatnot, but I certainly always look forward to it. Dr. Gordon, thank you so much for being so giving with your time and really taking the time to explore these ideas.
Well, thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, well, we look forward to it. Go to Mises.org, sign up for Dr. Gordon's class on Ayn Rand. Good stuff today, guys. Thanks again, Dr. Gordon.
Thank you.
Okay, take care. Come on back tomorrow. More fun.
AM 630, K-Talk. Preserving the American way for a new American tomorrow.
Wake up without yuck in your lungs or the dark cloud of lung cancer.